Mission Mississippi, for me, has been very life-changing. Because what it's done is it has allowed me to make amazing friendships. It has allowed me to meet people who I would have never had an opportunity to meet before from another race, who have become mentors to me in my personal life and also in my professional life. It has allowed me to really put myself in the shoes of other people and to see things from another perspective, because sometimes we can see things through very dimly, right, through a very narrow perspective. And so it's allowed me to really have a broader understanding of race relations. And it's also really given me the gift and the blessing of being more intentional about building friendships and relationships with people from another race in my personal life, but also in my professional life. I spend a lot of time traveling all over the country, speaking to professionals, but also to high school and college students about ethics and leadership and success. And it's made me really stop to think that I need to make sure I'm sharing my time, my talents with people not only from the white race, but also who go to predominantly black schools, for example. I'm going to Detroit to speak next month, and I'm going to speak at some of the inner city schools there. And so those have been things that for me have been a tremendous blessing. It's made me really stop to think about the importance of diversity, and in my professional life, looking for opportunities to build those relationships, those bridges, to open doors of opportunities for each other. What Mission Mississippi does is we bring people together.
What we're doing today is actually asking the panel to answer this question. We have the president of Alcorn State University, the president of Belhaven University, and the president of Mississippi Valley State University, along with students with them from the university. And we want them to answer the question of why is it that we're passing on racism, racial prejudice, racial hatred, and racial division from one generation to the next.
But I really feel as though a lot of things get passed along simply because we don't, as a whole, we tend to hold on to things that happened to us all, no matter what it was, and then we continue to instill it in our children, and then they say, well, my parents told me this, therefore I'm going to believe this, and then they tell their kids, and then it keeps on going. So rather than keeping on with the same practices, we need to learn how to just forgive and forget and move forward as a people.
I think it starts at home. We have to be cognizant of what we say and what we do around our children because they're listening and they're watching. So when they hear derogatory comments regarding a race or a religion, they take notice. And we don't do what we should as a society to make sure that we don't say those things, we don't do those things.
Moving forward, conversations like this are so key to dispelling this, but those conversations are obviously very uncomfortable, and people don't like to have uncomfortable conversations. I think it's so hard to bring people together into that table, and that's the biggest challenge, moving forward, and what I think has held us back. I know you can have everyone on one side come, but when you try to bring that other side in, naturally, they're going to be intimidated and not want to come. So I think the challenge, along with addressing both what they've said previously, is really how do we make the other side come to this table and feel comfortable and help dispel some of the things that we think separate between the races that really, truly may not.
From my perspective as president of a Christian university, sin is a real thing. And at the core of racism is sin. And the challenge with sin is that at our own power, sin's easier than not sinning. And so we default to that unless we are committed beyond that. And from my perspective, ask the power of God to take us beyond that. I think racism is also one of those sins that unfolds. It's not one of those that you solve one Sunday night and get it settled between you and the Lord forever and you're done. I think you have to, as you ask God to help you address it, God reveals more and more opportunities to make it cleaner. And it's a process that has to be worked on.
I believe that a lot of the issue is that we're just stuck in the comfort zone. Instead of, reaching out, we're sticking on what's familiar. We're afraid to branch out. And in my opinion, we should respect the differences, not fear them. We should just stop focusing on what makes us different and instead respect it. There's so much more to learn from each other than just, culture's an infinite amount of knowledge. There's still so much to learn.
Well, adding to all those points, I was thinking the answer for this question, but in the end, like each generation, there isn't taking the responsibility to overcome the problem. And as stated before, we rather show less effort and get by than put the work to deal with the problem. And we're inclined to favor or hang out with the people just like us. And right at the beginning of this session, you were asked to go and join to another table, right? Because when we see common things, oh, they look like us, you go over there and hang out with them. But it really takes extra effort and education and to overcome that.
Here's the bottom line. The true test, I think, of racism, racial difference, and why we pass it comes down, as I said, to money, power, respect. And it really shows itself when we are forced to make long-term decisions. And those long-term decisions are, where do I live? Where do I go to church? Who gets hired, or who I'll get to work with? Or who do I befriend and socialize with? And so I'm so glad that we've started this conversation today with the church because, as you know, the 8 a.m., 11 o'clock a.m. Sunday hour still continues to be the most divided hour in this country. And so it's appropriate that we start with the church because, again, it is the most divided.
Just the gospel and just a relationship with Christ is my answer. And I don't think we're really embracing that. And we say, well, I'm a Christian and, I love the Lord. But do our actions line up with that? I say that and, I'm wearing this label. I'm labeling myself as a Christian, but am I actually living, am I fleshing that out? Am I walking that out every day? And so I think if we are intentional about teaching, our generation and the generations, behind us to come about Christ and, things like that, we can intentionally try to hone in on this issue and just have those kinds of conversations, and hopefully we'll start to pass on the gospel from each generation, and we won't have so much of racial division and things like that being passed on.
Racism and the reason that it is passed on to generations is because it's not just a skin thing, it is a sin thing. It's part of the human condition. We've evolved to protect ourselves and our families and our clans by seeing risk and threats and differences. And if we acknowledge that, if we acknowledge the concepts that are defined in research as implicit bias, where we culturally, and it doesn't matter if we're black or white, we have a negative association with the darkness of one's skin. We have a negative association with different body types. We have a negative association with different religious dress and symbols. And that's because we're human. That's because we're human.
One thing that I think that we must do is lift as we climb. We have to look back at those things in our past and take from them and use them in our future to make sure that we don't have these same causes and things going on in the future. We must break the bad habits that we have. If I've been taught to go to church every Sunday with my family and people that look like me, how do I know that it's a problem? That I don't see anyone of a different racial background at my church on Sunday morning? Or if I've been raised in the same community with my same friends and the same people that I look like, how do I know that that's a problem? So one thing that I think we must do is put thought, theory, and theology into action. And we must love each other, regardless of the racial binds that we may have or the things that we've done in the past. We must love. because love supersedes all things.
The uniqueness of today is to have a conversation with the audience. They get a chance to participate about how to pass on a better legacy of race relations to the next generation. And I think it's great that we had this opportunity because in essence we have the past generation, the current generation, or the present generation, and the future generation sitting at the table, sharing ideas and thoughts of both why we pass it on and how we get passed it on, but also more importantly, what are we going to do about it together and what are we going to do about it individually to stop it.